What's up, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in to a Heroes Escape, your place for all things Heroescape. Today I've got a video on basing your figures. There's many different ways to do the bases of your figures. You can style them all different ways. I'm actually just doing one simple method for this video, which is grass and rocks, but there is actually a great video about basing made by Skateboard on YouTube, and he has some different methods too. His video is actually about basing Heroescape figures with budget alternatives. I'll put the link to that video in the description so people can check out that video as well. With Renegade's release of Heroescape Age of Annihilation, I'm very happy with the miniatures themselves. I think that the actual sculpts of these are really impressive, and by far they are a lot better than classic Heroescape. A lot of people might argue with that because certainly people that have been fans of the game for the whole time, they like the classic figures, and there is a charm to them, don't get me wrong, but these are just much better figures. They're sturdier, they're better sculpts, everything about them. Some people are a little upset that they don't always come painted, and here are some examples here. All of these figures that I have in front of me were unpainted figures except for one. Shiori here, the promo figure, came actually painted. And I gotta say, in my opinion, I think my personal paint job, my own painting, the non-painted figures, I think actually looks better than the pre-painted figures do. So that's something to be said. But to me, I like the inclusion of the non-painted figures for a few reasons. One is that it's kind of cool to be able to paint the figures. It's a fun little hobby, and you can be really proud of your work at the end. That being said, some people are upset about it because they don't want to have to do it. But the fact that there is non-painted figures as an option, it also gives us a cheaper option. If all the figures were painted, all we would see is the really expensive Age of Annihilation sets that come with pre-painted figures, and for a lot of people it's too expensive, but you can get the non-painted versions and it's a lot more affordable, and then you get a fun little hobby to do. So anyway, today I'm going to teach you guys how to do a base like this, where you have grass and rocks and different things. It looks very cool. It really makes the battlefield come alive, and it certainly looks a lot cooler than the classic Heroescape figures with just the flat bases with the stickers on top of them that were supposed to look like grass or something. So I'm going to use a pre-painted figure for this tutorial. This is, what's his name? Cornelius Breach. And he was another one of the promo figures. And this one is, yeah, pre-painted. I did not paint this one myself. And that is something to keep in mind. So when you're basing one of the non-painted figures like this, you are going to have to also paint the base. So I actually used just brown acrylic paint on here. And you can see how the bottom is unpainted, but I did paint the top. But these guys come with a brown base already, the pre-painted figures. Basically, though, I like to use acrylic paints as opposed to like army painter paints. So this here is an army painter paint. And I will say, from my experience, the army painter paints are more satisfying to use when painting figures. They're easier, but they're more expensive. And I already have a bunch of acrylic paint because I like to paint, as you can see in the background. Even though I'm not very good at it, I do enjoy it. And so certainly you can just use basic acrylic paints, and I would actually recommend it. I do have some army painter paints for different things like metallics, and this one here is for a wash over the top to get like shadow and the deep crevices and stuff. But what we're gonna need for this is black and gray acrylic paint, or if you have, black and white acrylic paint, which we're going to use to make different shades of gray, or if you just have a gray army painter paint or black and white or whatever you want to use. But for me, I'm going to use acrylic paint. I'm also going to use this Army Painter dark skin shade wash. And then I also have right here is Duco plastic model cement, which I got from my local hardware store. We're gonna need a little paintbrush, which I just have a little fine point Army Painter paintbrush here, and a cup of water. Over here in this box is this is all little pieces from a corks from wine bottles. And I had these just sitting in my cabinet for years, and I actually took the corks and put them on a cutting board and just started slicing them up with a knife and got these little bits. And these work really well for creating rocks. You can see here on Admiral EJ, all of the rocks on his base here are actually just little bits of cork that I ended up painting. In addition to that, I have these here, which I think are Army Painter brand. They're called like little grass tufts. And I got this patch of them at my local game store for like $6. So this is a really great thing to use. I'm sure there's like other things you can use to make grass that you can just household items. I don't know. But this was $6, so I didn't think it was like really that big of a deal. They are sticky already on the bottom, but it doesn't hurt to add some super glue. Use that to attach it anyway. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I've got my palette here. and I am actually going to use this to mix up my gray paint. We're gonna start out with a dark shade of gray. So we're gonna need more black for this shade. Later on, we're gonna do a lighter shade of gray, but just starting out, we're going to start with a darker shade. So go ahead and just place your drop of black paint on your palette. And I mean, you don't need a palette, like a real palette. You can just literally use a piece of cardboard or something, whatever you have on hand. It's not that big of a deal. But there's our, we got some black paint here and some white paint here. Now I'm gonna take my brush, and I'm actually out of paper towels, which is kind of a problem, but I'm gonna do what I can here. We're just going to mix up some black into the white over here, and we're gonna form a gray till it gets to be a pretty even color. And for this one, we want a dark gray. This is gonna be the base coat for the rocks. Okay, and there we go. That's a really good shade right there. That's what we're gonna want, is this color gray right here. And I'll get it from the top-down camera too for people to see. That color gray is what we're going for. I know it's a little bit of an issue with the different cameras. The colors are kind of different, but yeah, this is what we're going for here. But before we start doing that, the first thing we have to do is take our figure, and we're actually going to apply some of our model cement to the base in different areas where we're going to want some of this, some of these rocks and stuff. So first, we want to apply the rocks before the grass because we don't want to paint over the grass. So we're just going to take some of our model cement here, and we are going to start applying it to the base of Cornelius Breach. There's a lot of space here on this side, so we can get quite a few rocks on that end, and then we'll do a little bit over here. And that's pretty much what we're gonna do for the cement. Now be sure to seal that up, and then after you're done, you're gonna take your Tupperware or your container of little bits of cork, and you are just going to dip him inside here and start shaking it around, trying to get the pieces of cork onto the super glue. Sometimes you might have a challenge getting them to stick, and when this happens, you can actually just take the pieces out and start sticking them on there. But once they're on there, we're gonna start pressing them into the glue with our thumb, just like this. And some of these will stick, some of them won't. That's okay. The ones that aren't sticking, they'll just fall off, and that's perfect. So there we go. We've got some different rocks here, and that's what it's looking like now before we paint it. But once this dries, then we are going to go ahead and here, we could probably get this one really cemented on here, just like that. I think all of these should stick pretty well. They're all pretty encased in the cement. Woo! And yeah, this is looking pretty good. We can even get one more little rock right over here where there's some exposed cement still. Oh, I lost it. Let me try this one. Oh, these things are a little tricky to work with because they're so tiny. Sorry, I know my camera is not focusing super often like I would like it to. Okay, I think there's not enough cement there, so we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to stick with this. This is what it's going to look like before it's painted. Now you need to let your cement dry, and then once it's done drying, you're going to come in with your paint, and we are going to paint over the top of these corks. So I am going to fast forward to the point where it's dry, and then we'll get to painting. Okay guys, I'm back after an intense game of Tetris. I think our model cement should be mostly dry now, hopefully. And we will go ahead and get started with the painting. It does feel pretty dry, pretty secure. So because I'm out of paper towels, I just went and got a wad of toilet paper to use. And the point of this is literally just to get the water off of the brush. But now, actually the toilet paper is not ideal because little pieces are coming off on the tip of the brush. But now we are going to dip it into our dark gray paint, and we are going to begin painting the rocks dark gray. This is the first step. Once this is done, we are actually going to mix up a lighter shade of gray and dry brush it onto the corners and raised areas on the rocks. This is going to help make the rocks look much more realistic. And then once that's dry, we apply the wash, which will go into the deep spots. And then after that, the last thing we need to do is glue on our grass tufts. So with this, like, some people might want to be more careful than me, but I just kind of paint all over it. I don't really care that much if I get some of it on the base. It's not that big of a deal to me. I think, you know, it's all going to come together in the end. Even if you get some on the base, it's not going to be the end of the world. It is a little trickier, though. You don't really want to be getting it on the figure. So that's a little bit more tricky. Be careful about that. And you can see I actually just got some on the tip of the sheath of his sword right there. But it's not the end of the world. This one is a little bit tough because of how many rocks I glued on. You can certainly do less and have a much easier time. All right, so there you can see one of the pieces of cork was not fully secured on by the model cement, and it actually just popped right off when I was painting. So that's maybe the cement wasn't dry enough, maybe there just wasn't enough of it. But yeah, those are some things you might want to worry about. But it's not really the end of the world. You don't really need a specific number of rocks or anything like that. It looks much more natural to just have a random number. So it's definitely not the end of the world. We're trying to make this look organic, not computer generated. now we have all of our dark gray painted on. We're gonna let this dry for a bit, and in the meantime, while that's drying, let me just touch up a few spots. But in the meantime, while that's drying, we're gonna start mixing up our light gray. So we're gonna mix in all the rest of the white that's sitting over here and see if it will be enough to get a good light color here. If it's not, we're just gonna add more white. And it definitely does not appear to be enough. So what I'm gonna do is actually drop some white into this next spot to the right here. All right, that's a lot of white. So we're just gonna move some dark gray over into that and mix that up. And this should get us a pretty nice light gray color. All right, that's looking pretty good, I'd say, for the most part. We just have to give our rocks on Cornelius Breach here some time to dry before we continue. And then once that is good to go, we will keep working here. Okay guys, I'm back. I actually just took a hairdryer and used it on the figure to try and get the rocks more dry so we can power through this. But now we're gonna apply our light gray acrylic paint using a dry brush technique. So we're actually just gonna take the brush, dip it in the paint, and then get most of the paint off onto the toilet paper here, or paper towel would be preferred. And then we are going to start applying it, mostly trying to hit the corners and the raised areas of the rocks, like so. Let me try to get this focused so you can see. There, it's starting to give some definition to the rock there by just actually applying this primarily to the raised parts. And you can see how some of the spots are still dark gray in the like recesses and stuff. And that is exactly what we're going for here. We will keep applying to the rest of these rocks here. And yep, that's just what we want right there. That looks perfect. That there, I actually placed a little too much paint on that spot, but it's all gonna be okay when we apply the wash. It's really gonna change everything. So it's just gonna make stuff really pop. And okay, this is looking pretty good. So we'll move on to some of these other rocks, get a little bit more of our paint here. And here we go. Just loosely applying it to the raised portions of the rocks. And yeah, these are just little bits of cork from a wine bottle that now look like realistic rocks, or are getting very close to it. And this is a very simple process. You're just painting a dark gray base, and then you are going and dry brushing over the top with, it's not quite dry brushing, it's kind of a in-between technique where there's still a lot of wet paint on the brush, but similar concept to dry brushing. And we're just getting the raised parts of the rocks with this light gray. And that's going to make definition. That's going to make it pop. This part's a little trickier because we have to do it through the legs here and try our best to not paint the figure itself. And just try to get a lot of light gray on these rocks here. That's what we want. So I'm going to say that's pretty good, just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and take the hairdryer to it again to try and dry off all of this light gray paint here. Let it dry so that we can apply our wash. All right, guys, that hairdryer really works wonders when trying to dry acrylic paint. And here's our guy. He's pretty much dry in just a few seconds of using the hairdryer on it. Our last step for these rocks that we're going to do is use our it's the Army Painter Dark Skin Shade Wash. This is going to fall into the crevices of the rocks so that we have a lot of definition and a lot of a lot of contrast between the high points and the low points of the rocks. So we take this, we drop it into our palette here, just like that's probably enough for doing the rocks. We don't want to waste too much of this. And you know, sometimes when you're actually painting the figures, you might just want to completely cover them. That's probably not the best practice, but it seems to be getting pretty good results for myself. I will say that Admiral EJ here does not have any of that wash on the figure at all, except for the cape back here. But a lot of my other figures, like this one, for example, I literally just covered the entire figure in the wash, and I think it looks pretty good. I mean, you can tell it's a little messy, but for the most part, especially from a distance, it looks quite good. Also, these, like, there's a lot of messy areas with, like, kind of almost splotches that are raised. That is because of the type of paint I'm using. If you use the actual Army Painter model paints and stuff, it's probably going to be more even across the figure because it's a thinner paint. But just basic acrylic paint from the craft store is very thick, and it will pile up in like thick like that. So okay, here we go. Here's our guy. For this part, it's probably best to place him onto a paper towel or a piece of cardboard or something, because this is going to get really messy. But basically, this wash is so thin that it's just going to run all over the place. And so we're just going to start applying it onto the rocks just like that and let it do its thing and run around. Now, if your acrylic paint is too wet, like mine very possibly is, it might not run the way it's supposed to. It might stick to the acrylic too much. But basically, yeah, that's the idea. We're just going to be putting it on the rocks like so and letting it do its thing, go into the crevices and the deep areas. And when it dries, it's going to look really good. Like there's just a lot of depth, a lot of definition in here. And that is what we want. All right, now we're going to set him there and let him dry. Okay, after using the hair dryer, let's take a look. It's looking a little messy. I was holding it on top of the toilet paper towel, and actually was blowing. This has some wet paint on it, and I was accidentally blowing it around all over the figure, but it's not too bad. It's just a little messy on the actual base. If I can get it in the light here, let me see what I can do. Let's try this. Get some better lighting on it. And you can see there's just a lot of gray on the base itself. The wash is looking pretty brown. Not exactly the effect I was going for. When it dries, it should look good. As you can see, this one here, the rock down there by his foot, all those really dark spots are that wash that's dried. So it doesn't stay looking super brown. It starts to look actually pretty natural. But this one I think is just still a bit wet. But just for the sake of ease of the video, we're going to move on, because I can't make this too difficult on myself editing wise. The next thing we have to do is take our cement, find some areas that are not covered by rocks, and start applying the cement. That's because this is the part where we are going to apply the grass. So let's see, get a good focus on it. And we are going to apply cement. Right here would be a good spot for some grass. We can smear that around a little bit. Right here would be a good spot. Down in there. I think right here would be another really good spot. Okay, so we've got plenty of spots here to be placing our grass now. Go ahead and set him down. Get your cap on your model cement. And now you take your tufts of grass one at a time. And you have to not be scared of the glue here. You're gonna be getting glue on your fingers. It's not the end of the world, trust me. You'll be all right. But get your tufts of grass and start placing them onto those spots where we just applied the glue, like so. If I can get, sorry, I know the lighting is like not ideal, so we want to get this lighting in a good spot. Now, if you can actually push this closer so it's not hanging off the base so much, about like that, that's probably going to look better in the long run. Here's another one. We will go ahead and place it in this spot where we have put our glue. Right here. We can grab another one, stick it deep inside there where we put some glue between the legs, like so. And you can see it's starting to really come together now. There's one more spot here. We'll place one of these right in there. The worst part about this model cement that I use is that it has all these little stringy things. So you kind of just have to start taking those off once they dry. I think we have a few more spots we could get and make it look even better. Like right here would be good. Maybe a little bit right there. Don't be afraid of the glue. You are not going to die from getting some glue on your hands. Now here is a stylistic option. I mean, I've got his boot pretty well covered. By grass here. Maybe you don't want to do that, and that's totally understandable. So you can definitely take your time and be more careful with how you apply this stuff so that it's not covering up different parts of the figure and whatnot. But there we go. I think that's pretty good for my figure. I'm going to stop it right there. I don't think I need any more than that. And there you have it. Now you have a realistic looking base for your miniature. And it just looks awesome, right? So there it is. Here is another one of the pre-painted ones I did, Shiori. I did not put any rocks on hers because I figure not every single miniature needs to have rocks on their base. Some can just have grass, and that looks just fine. But in fact, variation is better. Definitely watch the skateboard video to see some more variations of things to do for your bases. But there we have it. That's how to base your miniatures and make some cool, realistic looking bases. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want more videos on customizing miniatures and painting miniatures and different things like that, maybe some terrain customization, please go ahead and put a comment down there explaining that you're interested in that and would like to see more. And definitely subscribe if you want more HeroScape content. I upload several times a week, and there's always more videos on my channel to watch. Thanks everyone for the support.